So this is the campaign is by Ghanaians against child abuse. We're talking about this subject this morning with Emmanuel Tetteh. He's child advocate and developmental practitioner representing GACA. Good morning to you.
Good morning, MV.
When you watch the clip that we just played, there are certain aspects of it where essentially saying that there's always another way. But how many times were you not beaten as a child?
Thank you for the question. That has been the issue. And I just want to take this opportunity to say hi to your cherished viewers. Yes, we have been beaten. The research over the years has made us now aware that the beating has rather done us more harm than good. So do we have to continue doing what is not giving us the result that we want? No. That is why we are here talking about it. Because most of the time, the reason why we beat the children, what we want to get, you only get the short-term result. The long-term effects are devastating. And as our conversation goes on, we will mention some of the specific things that result from abusing our children.
You know, there are people who say that, as for that particular child that I have, you have to put some fear in him or her. You talk and talk and talk and they don't hear. And that some people even want to believe that on this part of the world is the beating that can send the message. The other side is, you know, more like pampering the child, putting the child in the corner and things like that. It's not our culture. What do you say?
Sure. That has been the issue. But as I said, academia and researchers, social workers have done a whole lot of research. And in 2006, United Nations actually brought the whole thing to bear. And they have actually taken away child abuse from issue of whether it's cultural, it is this, to a child right. As we sit right here as an adult, we do make mistakes. We do certain things that people do not like. When that happens, how do we expect them to treat us? Children are human beings, irrespective of their age, and they have their right. So violating or abusing the child amount to violating their right. So beating is taken away from whether it is cultural, it is this, to a human right issue. And again, like I'm saying, research has demonstrated to us that the result that we want while we are beating the children, while we are abusing them, is rather what we are not getting.
Okay.
Because we are building them for the future, and we need to put certain discipline in them. And rather,
can we explain the abuse as you're using it in the context that you're using it? What kind of abuse are you talking about?
Thank you very much. General abuse, a dictionary definition will tell you that misuse of anything. And for that matter, when we are talking about abuse in general, then we are talking about anything that you do to a child that will affect the child's survival, their development, their dignity, and health. And children are very, very vulnerable. And for that matter, they are rather the people we should protect. So the moment we start doing some of these things, hitting them, spanking them, beating them, then we are actually exposing them to a lot of danger. And specifically when we are talking about physical abuse, then we are talking about any non-accidental injury that you cause to the child. That will affect the 4 areas that I mentioned, i.e. their survival, development, dignity, and health. And you agree with me that when you keep on spanking your child, you are actually putting him or her to a danger. Stress will increase in him or her. And when stress increases in the child, it also increases cortisol. And the cortisol has one most important function. It breaks down your immune system. So if it goes up and it stays there and it doesn't come down, where we call the normal levels, then you are rather even exposing your child to all kinds of other diseases. When if you are not very careful, you are going to lose the child in the long run. So the effect which we will come to later are so devastating than understanding and rather bringing them to the knowledge that they need to.
But there's also the verbal abuse.
Sure.
If I am verbally, maybe abuse is strong, but if I'm saying things to you, that's different from grabbing you and practically beating you. Is it the same?
They are not the same. That will be classified under what we call psychological or emotional abuse. When you start insulting the child, you are belittling the child, you are making the child to feel that he is good for nothing. And that alone will start making the child feel bad. And like I said, immediately these things start happening, it triggers other hormonal secretion, and more especially cortisol. And cortisol is supposed to be one of our protecting hormones or chemicals in the body. That is when you face a danger, you quickly know that I should either fight or run away to safety. That is stress, call up positive stress. When it is to a large extent continuous, you get to what we call tolerable stage. But when it continues, so even verbal abusing the child and the child cannot come to you and feel safe, alone will make that level of cortisol very high. And like I said, it breaks down the child's immunity. So any diseases that is passing it somewhere, as somebody will put it, will come and affect your child. And if you are not very careful, you even lose your child. So all the abuses, we have 4 main types: physical, social, or psychological or emotional, sexual, and neglect. So these days, even the neglect can have various levels. So we have what we call abuse and neglect, because we have physical neglect, and all these things affect the child, and more importantly, their mind, and makes them not feel like they are human beings, so that they can take up challenges and be innovative. Now it is said all over the world that it is people who innovate that are going to make it. So when you start treating your child in that way, they are afraid to make mistakes because the consequences of it they don't know. And the moment you do that, you are putting the child down, and they are not able to take any decision on their own. They become so timid to the extent that nothing good can come from them.
So how do you discipline a child then?
Yes, there are various ways we call positive discipline. And some of these things that happens for us to beat our children is as a matter of we not being able to manage conflict. In fact, parents have 1 or 2 major roles to play: to discipline their children and also to socialize them. And when we are doing these things, it results in all kinds of conflict. But how do we manage it? One of the reasons is that we don't understand the child development principles and things that goes with them. For example, one of the key questions that we ask ourselves is nature and nurture. Which one is stronger? But again, research is telling us that when you have even inherited to be the most intelligent person on this planet Earth, but you are not properly nurtured, it can destroy everything. So why do we go that way? So when we understand this thing, the child has emotion. How do we manage his or her emotion for the child to understand us and know that this is what I must do for my parents to like it or not like it? So that is what we call about positive discipline, where we set standards, structures, we engage the children, depend on their age. But touching them and hitting them is against their human right baseline.
At what point should you begin that? Because I'm thinking that if the child is already used to your abuse, the kind of way that you discipline the child, can you change from being that kind of parent to the one who is now beginning to talk?
Sure, that can be done, but that is where the problem is. Somebody said that it is very difficult to renovate a house than to build a new one. Because in that case, you need to put in more effort for the child also to believe that this is what is going to happen. So you start day 1 when the child is born to start to discipline the child, for the child to know how, and that is what we call attachment development. Emotional bond between the caregiver, it could be the father, it could be the mother, or any other person. And thank God we can develop various or multiple attachments, so that if the child goes to even preschool, the relationship all that takes place over there will all help the child to get this bonding. So when the child is bonding in that area, they also have the feeling that let them not do things that will annoy my parent. And we do all these things starting from when they are very young, especially between the ages of 3 to 6. Where they learn things and their brain develop very fast. That is where you teach them all these things. When they are in preschool, learning how to hurt one another and not to take their friends' toy without asking permission. When you begin to do this, then you are training them for them to understand why they must not do A and B and C. So you start from day 1 when the child is born, and you continue to educate him or her.
So what if you do that at home, but the child goes to school and the teacher is using a ruler and things like that as punishment in knocking their fingers and things like that? How do you, because that's part of the things that we don't have to do.
Exactly, and that is why it is very, very important, because the formative years is very critical and key. And in this country, sometimes that is where we have our problem. We don't develop these things and develop them at the early stages and do them well, and especially in our preschools. Most of the schools that we go, you don't have people who have this knowledge. Children have their rights. Children are also active in their development. children play a key role. They are just not there, occupying space. So when the child is doing something and you want him or her to stop, how do we even communicate with them? Do we do that one with respect for them to know that I must stop this thing? We don't do that. So we go in quick to punish instead of discipline. They don't understand why, because he is also doing something that is interesting him or her. Jane Piaget says that children are young scientists that are exploring their world. So even at home, at school, wherever, the child is doing something, engulfed in it, very much interested, and you want him to stop. You've not communicated for him to buy in that what you are telling me, I must put mine aside and do this. Then you go and beat. You get the initial response, but finally it's going to affect them. When you do that, it even affect their brain development, their emotional development, and their brain becomes smaller in terms of its growth. So we are saying that the architecture of the brain must be built during this very time, and it takes place through interaction. So this is where we don't have time. So our preschools must be taken care of, and we must train people so that they do the right thing. When you do it at the home and they don't do it well there, then there's a big problem. Another major issue is that too much of expectation from the children at the preschool is what is even causing the teachers to even beat them. Here in Ghana, when children are in preschool, we want them to start writing A, B, C, D, and their names and things of that nature. Going to Finland, this is where the child have to relax and learn so many things and how to cope with one another. At that early stages, what children need to know is to acquire social and emotional competencies.
Not
and when they,
2, 3, 4 homeworks.
Those kind of writing which they don't know how to do, and we are beating them. So when we do that, rather it affects the academic performance because we've affect their brain development. So we need to be able to follow up and make sure that we supervise these things, and our caregiving, institutions, the daycares must do their work and do them very well.
Is there room for adults as well? Because I know that often when we are frustrated ourselves as parents, that's when we kind of channel some of that frustration on the children. You may not even know what you're doing, but you're just passing on something that you feel personally within you.
You are 100% right. So in general terms, we group the reason or risk factors into 3: cultural and societal context. How do we accept it? When we accept these things and nothing is binding us and asking us not to do, we are always easy to turn into doing that one, and we are okay. So in countries where it is not done, and in Africa, about the 54 nations that we have, it's only 5 countries that have actually ruled or banned all kinds of abuse at home and schools and things of that nature. So when you do, you have a problem. Totally. Okay. Ghana, we are not. We are saying that because of our culture and this kind of event, that's what we are saying. Now we have taken it away from there to human rights level. And part of it is education. That is why we are here. The parents themselves, they need to understand child development. They should be able to understand that children play a role in their own development. Children are also individually different. So don't compare 2 children. If you are treating Ajwa and Ajwa is responding, Kwesi might not respond. Kwesi might be what we call difficult child. It doesn't mean that he is good for nothing. He or she is coming from their temperamental. Temperaments are different. Somebody will respond to situation differently. You yourself must understand the child so that you can go in and help him or her. And the last one is the child himself. Again, when you are able to bring them together closer to you, regulate their emotion, teach them how to do this, the conflict that will always come for you to be tempted to beat them is reduced, and you will be able to overcome some of these challenges.
So we have a long way to go.
Exactly so. You are 100% right. And that is why we in GACA are very happy when you give us this platform to share the little that we know about some of these things to build our capacity. So lack of knowledge is one of the key things that is killing us, thinking that we are doing it right, especially when we even want our children to perform academically. But the beating is rather going to impair their academic performance.
What's the strategy for those who are really traditional, people who have experienced it, who feel that it's the punishment that brought the best of me, and so let me just pass it on because that's what I've learned and that's what works? What's the strategy in getting such people to change their minds?
That is very, very, very true. Anytime we are doing training, whatever level, you hear people coming to tell you that if we had not been beaten, we wouldn't have been here. But ask the question, what about the other person who had been beaten and perhaps drop out of school? It takes one person to bring about the whole change in a nation and even in a community. That person could have been the very person who could have even used a champon for the champon wheat. That person could have done some research and know that can even cure AIDS or whatever. But because of that beating, that person draws away. So the question is that the developmental impact, the negative one is so great. So what we are telling everybody is that, yes, we have done some of those things in the past. Perhaps we got the result because of certain conditions. Children might have also tuned their mind that, oh, that is the situation, so they are able to overcome. We have what we call, there are individuals who have what we call ego resiliency. So difficult situations, they are able to quickly change it to a positive one. What about these very person that you are melting the same treatment to, who do not have that capacity? You damage that person for good. In fact, some of the things that we are seeing as part of the abuse that we give to children, we have something in our mind, we call it the mirror neuron. When it is destroyed, then you are not able to empathize with people. Excuse me to say, Major Mahama incident happened when I was in Israel studying and I was following your news. This man was lynched because there was people there who do not have their mirror neuron working. So they were not able to empathize and put themselves in his shoe. Simply because when children are being beaten, we enjoy it and we watch on. Nobody cares. A typical example is when you are watching football. Why is it that when team A is losing, you are happy, and team B is being defeated, you are not happy? Because you are activated your mirror neuron to that one, so you sympathize with them. The same thing happening in the long run. Armed robbery and all that is happening. In fact, the crimes in our society is as a result of some of this abuse. People are not guilty enough to empathize with people, and for that matter, we need to. So anybody with that traditional notion, times have changed. Information we're not flowing in the other places in those days. So when children think that this is all that I have, perhaps they cope and adjust to it. But now they are also aware. They can compare with their friends, and they will know that you are abusing their right. And immediately that happens, the pain is bottled. And when that happens, you and the child relationship even becomes even worse off, and things of that nature. So
we've heard stories elsewhere where a child can pick up the phone and make a phone call when they feel that they're being abused one way or the other. In Ghana, we're talking child's rights. What can a child do if they feel that, you know, either parents or guardian or whoever is abusing them?
Good question. We are not trying to advocate that children should be taking phones and be calling, but we know that here in Ghana, we are fortunate, we are very religious. We have our Christian council, various churches and mosques, what have you. We have our leaders, we know our parents actually listen to some of these people. If something is worrying you as a child, that is one of the areas you can actually go to and talk to your church leader, your pastor. They can call your father or your mother, whoever is concerned. If it continues, social welfare is there. They just don't come in and go and prison you, but they will find out what exactly is happening so that we settle the issue. In fact, Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection has a very good policy which they have drawn, and they have 5-year plan that we are all following to educate ourselves. And when we follow that one, there will be levels, various levels of settling some of these disputes. Sometimes parents themselves will understand that the very thing that I'm actually so angry about is something that I can even accommodate. It's part of the growing. So that when we get to that level, that's where we are. So when children are abused, they must find an adult in their community, talk to the person will also go to their parents, or if they are also to the wrong side, they will be talked to and advised. When those things happen, we will not get to the situation where we pick phones and report. But when it becomes in danger, when the child's life is in danger, then that one, the best place is to go to the police, DOFSU to be specific, domestic violence, and they will take care of you.
So just finally, I feel like asking you to give parents tips. If you're blowing up, a child has done something and you feel really strongly about it, you want to physically do something, how do you talk yourself into not doing it? Is there any particular strategy that you might want to share? What do I tell myself? How do I get over myself and how I feel so I don't translate that and transfer that onto the child?
Sure, that is very true. One of the ways that in that case you realize that you have become so emotional about the thing and you are so angry. You yourself can name your emotional state. And we need even to teach the children as well. The very things that they also do, which actually make us go mad and crazy, we can talk to them and let them also be able to name that emotion. So you, the parent or the caregiver, first and foremost, try to name the emotion. Tell yourself you are so angry, you are this, and know that when you follow that one, you are going to do things that the end result you even regret. So just calm yourself down. Another way that you can do is that you start to count from 1 to 10 in your head. for you to calm down. So that if you are that person who is highly emotional about things, intensity, we call it, about your temperament, by the time you count in your head up to 10, you might have calmed down and you know that, hey, I must do this, A, B, and so that you talk to the child. You try to also help the child to know how to maintain or manage or regulate his or her emotion, so that the conflict that brings about those tensions will be done away with.
Yeah. We should have you a lot more on the show so that, you know, we'll be sharing some of these. I think it would take a while for a lot of us to get it, but we will get there.
Sure.
We will get there.
Sure.
And I'm sure that we're getting somewhere even now with the campaign.
Exactly.
But thank you so much for passing through and for sharing. I've learned a few things. So Emmanuel Tetteh is a child advocate and developmental practitioner. He's representing Ghanaians against child abuse. So why don't we all begin to learn? We may not have experienced it necessarily, but there's always another way. Let's take the other way instead of what we think we know, because of what has been done to us.